Hey, so I wanted to make a video about uh, one of my essays. It's actually my favorite essay that I've published on Meta-Naissance. So, a disclaimer, a while back, not that long ago, Meta-Naissance got hacked and all the papers that were published there got completely scrubbed. Thankfully, I had all of the papers that I published there, except for two of them, saved on my phone, so I was able to republish it. Originally published on September 10th, 2024, this particular essay is called Instinctual Man, Ethnos, and Spirituality. It is 2,970 words, and it has, well, it's more than that now because I have a disclaimer on the at the beginning that says this was originally published in 2024. So there are 6 sections to the essay. The first section is the introduction, where I discuss the goal of the essay, as well as some things about myself, my thoughts on science and philosophy, and how those two interplay. I believe that science combined with philosophy creates for a very psychedelic practice. Science itself is somewhat psychedelic in that it reduces the ego consciousness, or subverts the ego. It requires this in order to do science properly, and it creates novel connections in the brain. So in that way, it is exactly like a psychedelic substance. I also discuss how I am a pragmatist and how I am a libertarian. Now, I do clarify in that section about libertarianism. Well, first off, the pragmatism part. I see eclecticism as part of pragmatism, and I explain this in the paper. As for the libertarianism part, there are different kinds of libertarianism. I'm not a true anarchist. I believe there are some instances in which the government is necessary. There are some instances when force is necessary, such as preventing the abuse of workers or of children, and safety standards for ensuring the safety for the customers. Now, the next section, the first actual section of the essay, is called The Dawn of Civilization. Now, when I first conceptualized this paper, this section played a big part in that, because I knew from the get-go that I wanted to bring up Riane Eisler's The Chalice and the Blade, and I knew I wanted to talk about that. So, I do talk about Riane Eisler's Chalice and the Blade in that section. I critique her, but ultimately I end up agreeing with her, using The Birth of the Gods and the Origin of Agriculture by Jacques Calvin, which was a book that I read in 2024, specifically because I knew I was going to need to read that book in order to finish my essay. So that the conclusion that I come to is essentially that the Chalice civilization, the Chalice culture, the egalitarian culture, was possible. However, they had different architecture, and they had different religious beliefs. They had a totally feminine belief, and it wasn't the fat Venus that we are used to being shown. It was a thin maiden type figure. So, and I do state that they may not have been actually egalitarian. It just appears that way. But if they were, this is what most likely caused it. I also critique Eisler for for failing to properly describe the invention of dominator culture. Okay, so the next section was about the Greeks, and so I begin by talking about Julian Jaynes, and I critique Julian Jaynes' theory, and I ultimately side with Robert Anton Wilson as opposed to Jaynes. I believe that Jaynes is correct on the described effect, that is, hearing voices, seeing deities, but he is wrong about the cause, and I believe that the cause is the fifth mental circuit being more easily accessed by ancient peoples. Now, I don't go into detail as to why that is. I don't actually know for sure why that is. I have some ideas, but that's beside the point of the essay. Then I reference Guillaume de Rocher and his book, The Ancient Ethnostate, and I list out all the practices that the Greeks had in maintaining their ethnos. The next section, if I recall correctly, was a useful practice. And that was I was referencing Biohistory by Jim Penman. And so I described Penman's theory, and I described the practices that he references that induce V, or vigor, and I say essentially that vigor is something that we should be striving for. We should be striving to maintain a balance between V and C, that is, civilizational factor and vigor. So in order to introduce vigor into the culture, Penman actually names two practices, and that is the Catholic practice of Lent and the Muslim practice of Ramadan. Now, I sided with Ramadan because it is more extreme. I have since learned about another practice from the Eastern Orthodox Church, but at the time I wasn't aware of this. Now, if I were to rewrite the article now, I would side with the Eastern Orthodox Church. And in that section, I also bring up how you don't have to hold any illusions about something in order to believe in it. And I bring up how Richard Weaver, the founder of modern conservatism, actually supported socialism. And he didn't support socialism because he believed it would create more prosperity. He supported it specifically because he believed it would create hardship. And he believed hardship was necessary for building the character of the people. He did not like the decadence that came with capitalism. So, the next section was spirituality, and in this I describe the benefits of Christianity, the benefits of religion, actually, the psychological benefits of religion, and I reference a book that it's been a few years since I read, by W.R. Clem, and he has a collection of the psychological benefits that are offered by religion. However, I critique this because all those studies were performed with Protestant Christians, and not everyone's a Protestant Christian, and Protestant Christianity has some limitations. I bring up how Catholicism has a balance between the feminine and the masculine, and actually has polytheistic elements to it. They do very little to hide their polytheism, the Catholics do. Then I discuss Hinduism, which is paganism. Hinduism is actually more complex than Christianity or Catholicism, and it resembles both monotheism and polytheism. And essentially, Hinduism has created the longest continuous culture that we know of. That would be the civilization of the Indus Valley, India, which has continued and carried on the same traditions for more than 5,000 years. That is longer than Jewish culture, which has only existed, well, they claim it's about 3,000 years. It's only really about 2,000 years. So, I also discuss shamanism in that section. And I then discuss a theory of mind, which I do believe in. Mind as a field, and I provide quite a bit of evidence for this. Several books, several theories combining together. And I come to the conclusion that we need a new religion of sorts in order to get the maximum benefit out of all of these things that I have discussed. Now the final section is the conclusion, and the conclusion I reference conservatism. I reference Roger Scruton in particular. I critique his notion of the true, the good, and the beautiful. And then I tie it all up in a neat little bow, saying essentially that yes, we will most likely need a new mythology in order to unify us. Our culture is decrepit. It's divided. So that's about all I wanted to talk about. Please check out my article. It'll be linked below. Thank you for watching. Peace.